Hey guys, this is Jesse with a introductory tutorial for the new P framework. The P framework is an up-and-coming web application framework written in Node.js. Unlike traditional web frameworks, P uses a socket-based architecture, which gives it very fast, real-time functionality throughout the entire framework. Um, I've been working on this as a personal project for about 2 years, and the latest revision of it, known as the P framework, has been in pretty heavy development for about the past month. So this is a very early development preview. So that being said, hopefully everything in this video will go as smoothly as possible. But we'll go ahead and just get started. I'm going to be just showing you a few things with the P framework today. I have here a just checked out copy of the P framework from our Bitbucket repo. So when you check it out, you basically get a completely working, ready to go server. And the directory structure of P really it matches CodeIgniter and CakePHP best. Those are frameworks I've been experienced with in the past. I work with them regularly at my job. So it seemed only natural that I should base P's directory structure off of that. Like most web frameworks, P uses a model view controller architecture for organization. You'll see here we have this app directory, and that's where most of the files for your actual application are going to reside. So we'll be focusing on that. Inside of there we have controllers, where obviously you store your controllers. You have data, where you can store any data you want. P also uses this folder to store temporary session user data. Models, where you can store models for database and file system access. Public is really, so how P works, just kind of sidetracking right here. You start the node server, and then the idea is you have a web server such as Apache or Nginx that actually serves this index.html page here, and that will connect to the P server with socket.io and display the application for you. So really, what I usually recommend doing is actually probably even putting this index.html file into the public folder and just serving the public folder with your server. That way your other files, like your controllers, aren't available for public access anyway. So that's kind of out of the scope of this tutorial, but that's just something I wanted to mention. But back to the public folder, this is where you can see you store CSS, images, and JavaScript files for your views and your application in general. Scripts is another place to store JavaScript files, but that's kind of a beta feature. It might not make it to the final release because I don't really find myself ever using it. But that's kind of, well, I'll save that for a later video. Strings is where you can store strings, basically. That's the best way. If anyone watching has ever played around with Android development, you know that you have a strings file. This is sort of the same thing. It basically just separates your strings, any messages or content that you might display. It separates that from the controller to better work with the MVC design patterns. And you can also you notice that this has an EN directory inside of it, as does the views folder where we store our EJS template views. But the P framework, as of a very recent release, has localization support, so just switching a config option, you can change which language you want to use. So you could put another folder in these strings and views folders, like ES for Spanish, and then you can, just on the fly switch languages. So that's really nice. And then we'll collapse the app directory. Another big part of the P structure is the app.js file, which is what you'll be running when you start the P server. and I'll show you that in a little bit. So, pardon me. Let's open our controllers folder. By default, we have two controllers, app and index. App will always be there, and so will index, really, but app is a special controller. Essentially, app controls application instance-wide actions, such as when the user connects, the onload method will be triggered. When the user disconnects, the onExit method will be triggered, allowing you to do like background processing, saving their work, whatever. And the before, pardon me, sorry about that. The before filter method, every controller has a before filter method actually, and basically the before filter method gets triggered before the controller is loaded. The app controller's before filter is, as you can see, called before any controller is loaded. So I don't find myself using the before filter in the app controller much, but one that I definitely use almost in every application I've made is the onload, where you can do any database loading, you can read the session, log the user in if necessary. That's the place to put that. And then we have the index controller. The index controller, and like in CakePHP and CodeIgniter, and I'm pretty sure any MVC, there are actions, which are just functions inside of the controller object. And basically they handle things like button click, stuff like that. So, that's strange. Anyway, when your application loads, it will look at the index controller, and then it will look at the index action. And as you can see here, we're using the P operator, which acts a lot like jQuery's $. And then we're actually calling the $, selecting body, and calling the custom.render method, which looks in the views folder for index.ejs and puts it inside of the element. The $sign thing is not actual jQuery. This is Node.js server side, but it's designed that you can use any kind of jQuery selector, and within reason, every method from the default jQuery method list has been implemented here, so it should mimic the jQuery API as best as possible. And that is going to have some improvement. You can't currently like chain methods like that, but hopefully you'll eventually be able to do that. So, that being said, let's go ahead and just look at the index view. It's just HTML and EJS. I don't know if you're familiar with EJS. Basically, it's ERB, so for Ruby's templating engine. It's essentially HTML with Ruby, or in this case, JavaScript thrown in. And you put it between these less than percent and greater than or percent greater than signs. This actually, as you might realize, is not JavaScript. This is a sort of preprocessor method for EJS that lets you include other views, in this case layout header, which is just a title bar. You might also pick up on the fact that we're using Foundation CSS framework just by our classes. By default, that's included, so you can just get up and running programming with a nice looking application right out of the bat. Yeah, that is, of course, optional. You can remove it at any time and use your own or whatever you want to do. And yeah, we just have some sample content here. It just gives you some information about the P framework. So let's go ahead and make a view. I'm going to I got rid of what was in there, and I'm gonna make a button that says "Click Me." So we're going to use a anchor tag, and we're just going to make the reference to a pound symbol, because that's not actually how we link in the P framework. Like I said, it's real time. There's no page refreshes, so we use a special tag. In this case, it's a shorthand, and we call it link equals. And then the way we do this is we specify the controller we want to link to, so index, and then we put period, and we specify what action we want. So we're going to use a custom action called button clicked. And we'll also give our button an ID of button1, and we'll give it a class of button just so Foundation can style it properly. And we'll just have it say click me. Close our other divs. Okay, so when we click the button, it's going to send it's going to call the index controller's button clicked action. So let's go ahead and make that. So we're in the index controller here. We're just going to add another action called button clicked. And so now inside of the button clicked action, we're going to use the $$ again, and we're going to use the pound symbol to select button 1. And let's set the HTML to clicked. So when you click the button, it's going to say clicked. And double check your ID always so you don't have any mistakes, okay? So now let's go ahead and start the P server. I have a terminal window here. It's we're currently in the directory, the P directory, so let's just run node app.js. And it'll do some startup. It gives us this warning about a session key. Don't really worry about that until production. It's just kind of to make your app unique when it's storing session data. And then I have Google Chrome here, which is open to the index.html file. So let's refresh the page, and you'll see, make this a bit bigger, there we go. You'll see we have our button now. And when we click our button, it goes to clicked. And aside from that pound sign being appended, it did not change pages. And well, that didn't even change pages. It just put that on the end of the current URL. No refresh. As you can see, it was very instantaneous, and we clicked the button. Now you might say, well, you can do that with any kind of, just normal jQuery, and that's very true. But where P makes it kind of nice is, again, this is server-side Node.js. So let's use the file system module from Node. And we will, let's read a file. So we are requiring the fs module and reading the non-existent hello world.txt. So we'll go ahead and just create that. And that just goes in the root. And then we'll just make it say, hey, buddy. All right. So now, instead of setting the HTML to clicked, we'll set it to contents. And we want to restart our server. And we'll refresh this page. And when we click it, it now says, hey, buddy. So we're reading from that text file. And as you can imagine, you can do any kind of Node.js stuff, MongoDB, MySQL, whatever you want, really. So there you have it. That's just some basics for P. And I'm just going to go ahead and continue this video. I know it's going to be long. I might have to split it up.